A single father cried in the rain with his newborn daughter. A stranger girl said, "Don't worry, I'll be her mother." Hello, my most precious, most deeply loved family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Sometimes I pause in the middle of my day and whisper your names in my heart, not because I see you, but because I feel you, every single one of you. You're not just viewers. You are a part of my soul. A soft echo in every heartbeat, a light in the middle of my storm. I don't care about numbers, I care about hearts. And when I ask for a like or a comment, it's not to boost a video, it's to feel you near. So today, if you still carry me somewhere in your spirit, just whisper in the comments, "You are not alone." Because when you say that, you're lifting me, healing me, reminding me that this love we share is still alive. I love you more than you'll ever understand. I care about your tears. I pray for your families. I hope you smile even on days when it feels impossible. I may not know your face, but my heart knows your presence, and it treasures it. Let me give you this prayer, written with the full power of my love. May your soul be blanketed in peace so deep it reaches your bones. May your worries be light, your joys multiplied, and your future bright with promise. May the ones you love be protected, and may you always find someone who sees the beauty you forget you hold. This isn't just a video. This is our home. This is where hearts meet. And I am nothing, nothing without the love you give me. You are not alone. You are deeply, eternally loved. The storm had turned Willowbrook Cemetery into chaos, where lightning split the darkened sky and rain fell like heaven's tears. Graham Luckin knelt beside the fresh grave, his knees sinking into muddy earth that had claimed his world just hours ago. The new headstone, rain-slicked and gleaming, bore the inscription, "Sarah Elizabeth Luckin, beloved wife and mother. Her love lives on in those she left behind." In his trembling arms, 3-week-old Donna wailed against the storm, her tiny fists beating against his chest, as if she too understood that everything beautiful had been ripped away. The baby's cries mixed with the thunder, creating a symphony of loss that echoed through Graham's shattered soul. His designer suit, bought specifically for this day he'd never imagined would come, clung to his lean frame like a second skin of sorrow. "Sarah," he whispered into the chaos, his voice barely audible above the storm. "I don't know how to do this without you. I don't know how to be her father without you being her mother." Lightning illuminated his face, revealing tears that had been falling since the moment the doctor had delivered the devastating words. "We did everything we could, but the complications were too severe. Sarah didn't make it, but your daughter is healthy and strong." Healthy and strong. The irony cut through him like broken glass. What good was a healthy daughter if her mother would never hold her, never sing her lullabies, never teach her to braid her hair or comfort her through heartbreak? The rain intensified, as if heaven itself was weeping for the woman who had brought such light into the world. Graham pulled his coat tighter around Donna, but the fabric offered little protection against the storm's fury. His hands shook as he tried to shield her from the worst of it, his wedding ring catching the lightning's glow, a circle of gold that now felt more like a shackle to a ghost. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he sobbed, looking down at Donna's red, tear-stained face. "I'm so sorry your mama isn't here. I'm sorry I'm all you have, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry I couldn't save her. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." The words tumbled out like a broken prayer, each apology another weight on his chest that threatened to crush what remained of his heart. He'd been a graphic designer, for God's sake. He created beautiful things on computer screens, not life, not miracles. He knew nothing about feeding schedules or diaper changes or how to make a baby stop crying when the whole world felt like it was ending. The wind howled through the cemetery, bending the ancient oak trees until their branches scraped against the sky like gnarled fingers clawing for heaven. Somewhere in the distance, he heard the sound of footsteps splashing through puddles, but he didn't look up. Nothing in this world mattered anymore except the tiny life in his arms and the devastating absence of the woman who should have been here to help him protect her. "Your little angel needs you strong." The voice cut through the storm like a blade. Of warm light, gentle but firm, carrying an accent he couldn't place, but that somehow sounded like home. Graham's head snapped up, rain streaming down his face, and his breath caught in his throat. Through the sheets of rain, a figure emerged with quiet purpose. A woman draped in black, moving toward him with an umbrella held high. Her dark skin glistened with raindrops, and her eyes held a depth of understanding that seemed to reach directly into his soul. She was beautiful in a way that spoke of strength forged through suffering. There was something in her face that revealed intimate knowledge of loss, kindness that had been shaped by fire. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant twist, and she carried white roses that remained perfect despite the weather. Without hesitation, she moved closer and extended her umbrella over them, instantly providing shelter that felt like more than just protection from the rain. It felt like sanctuary. The immediate relief from the storm's assault allowed Graham to truly see her for the first time, and what he saw took his breath away. This woman, this stranger, looked at him with such compassion that it nearly broke him all over again. But, more than that, when her gaze fell to baby Donna, something shifted in her expression, a recognition perhaps, or a calling that transcended explanation. "She's beautiful," Wisdom whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she looked down at the crying infant. "She has her father's eyes, doesn't she?" Graham nodded, unable to speak. How could this stranger see what he'd been too grief-stricken to notice? That Donna had inherited his green eyes, the same ones Sarah used to say looked like spring leaves in sunlight? He started, then stopped, his voice cracking. "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be enough for her." Wisdom's heart visibly broke at his words. She knelt in the mud beside him, her black dress immediately soaking through, but she didn't seem to care. Up close, Graham could see that her eyes were red-rimmed with her own tears, that her hands trembled slightly as she set the white roses aside. "I was visiting my husband," she said softly, nodding toward a grave several plots away. "River passed. A week ago, I heard your pain from across the cemetery and—" She paused, looking from Graham to baby Donna and back again. Sometimes God sends us to each other in the darkest moments. The baby's cries had softened to whimpers now, as if the presence of this gentle stranger had somehow calmed her. Wisdom's hand hovered over Donna's head, asking silent permission, and when Graham nodded, she gently smoothed the infant's downy hair. "What was her name?" Wisdom asked. "Your wife?" "Sarah," Graham managed, the words scraping raw against his throat. "Sarah. Elizabeth, she died giving birth. Complications. I was supposed to be celebrating the birth of our daughter, and instead—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Wisdom closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing his pain and making it her own. When she opened them again, they blazed with a fierce determination that took Graham completely by surprise. "Listen to me," she said, her voice steady despite the storm still raging around them. "I don't know why fate brought me here today, why River's grave is close enough to yours that I could hear your heart breaking. But I do know this. That little girl needs you to survive this moment. She needs you to find the strength to be her father, her protector, her whole world." Graham stared at her, mesmerized by the conviction in her voice, the way she spoke as if she could see straight through to his soul. "I can't," he whispered. "I don't know how to do this alone." And then Wisdom Moon did something that would change the course of 3 lives forever. She reached out and took Graham's face in her hands, her touch warm against his rain-chilled skin, and looked directly into his eyes with an intensity that felt like coming home. "Don't worry," she said, her words carrying the weight of a sacred vow. "I will marry you and be a mother to your daughter." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect and terrifying all at once. Graham's mouth fell open, rain catching on his lips, and for a moment the entire world seemed to hold its breath. And then, as if summoned by the power of her promise, the rain stopped. Not gradually, not with the usual tapering off that storms bring, but suddenly, completely, as if someone had simply turned off a faucet in the sky. The silence was deafening after the chaos, broken only by the gentle drip of water from tree branches and the soft, sleepy sounds Donna was making above them. Impossibly, a rainbow began to arc across the sky, its colors vivid and perfect against the grey clouds. Graham had never believed in signs, had never been the type to look for meaning in coincidence, but as he knelt there in the mud beside Sarah's grave with this extraordinary woman and his newborn daughter, he felt something shift in the universe. You, he started, his voice barely a whisper. "Did you just—" Wisdom smiled through her tears, an expression so radiant it seemed to light up the entire cemetery. "I meant every word," she said simply. "That beautiful baby deserves all the love in the world, and if God put me here to help provide it, then that's exactly what I'm going to do." As the rainbow stretched wider across the sky, Graham felt something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. It was fragile, tentative, but it was there, growing stronger with each moment. He looked into this stranger's eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and love. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but the storm was moving away, leaving behind the sweet scent of rain-washed earth and the promise of new beginnings. In that sacred moment beside Sarah's grave, with an angel named Wisdom Moon and a baby named Donna, Graham Luckin began to understand that sometimes love doesn't die. It transforms. It grows. It finds new ways to heal the broken places in our hearts. The rainbow continued to shine above them, a bridge between heaven and earth, as if Sarah herself was blessing this impossible, beautiful moment where grief and hope collided to create something entirely new. Something that looked remarkably like salvation. Chapter 2. Moonlight and Miracles. The full moon hung like a pearl in the velvet sky, casting silver light through Graham's windows. 3 nights had passed since the cemetery, 3 nights of sleepless struggle as he fumbled through caring for a newborn. The house felt hollow, too quiet when Donna slept, too chaotic when she cried, and always haunted by Sarah's absence. Graham sat in the rocking chair Sarah had picked out for the nursery, holding Donna against his chest as she wailed with the fury of someone who understood, even at 3 weeks old, that something fundamental was missing from her world. Her cries echoed off the walls of the room, painted in soft yellow. Gender neutral, Sarah had insisted, wanting to be surprised. Now those cheerful walls felt like mockery, filled with empty spaces where Sarah's voice should have been singing. "Lullabies. Please, baby girl," Graham whispered, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Please tell me what you need. I've fed you, changed you, burped you. I don't know what else to do." The doorbell rang, cutting through Donna's cries like a bell of salvation. Graham's heart leapt. He wasn't expecting anyone, and part of him feared it might be Sarah's parents, coming to judge his obvious failures as a father. They'd been calling constantly since the funeral, their voices tight with barely concealed disapproval at how he was coping. But when he opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. Wisdom Moon stood on his doorstep, illuminated by moonlight that caught the curves of her face, highlighting the gentle strength in her dark eyes and the compassion that radiated from her presence. She wore a simple cream sweater and jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders, carrying a thermos and covered bowl that smelled wonderful. "I hope you don't mind," she said softly, her voice carrying that same musical quality he remembered from the cemetery. "I made chicken soup, and I thought, well, I thought you might need some help." Behind her, Graham could see her car parked in his driveway, and the practical part of his mind wondered how she'd found his address. But the larger part, the part that was drowning in grief and exhaustion, only felt overwhelming relief at seeing her again. "Wisdom," he breathed, and the name felt like a lifeline on his lips. Yes, please come in. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but Donna's been crying for 2 hours straight, and Wisdom stepped inside, her presence immediately filling the space with warmth. The moment she entered, something shifted in the atmosphere of the house, as if light was finally breaking through the darkness that had consumed it since Sarah's death. "May I?" she asked, setting down the soup and thermos on the entryway table and extending her arms toward the crying baby. Graham nodded, beyond exhausted and desperate for any kind of help. The moment Wisdom took Donna into her arms, something miraculous happened. The baby stopped crying. Not gradually, not with the usual hiccuping wind-down of infant tears, but immediately, completely, as if a switch had been flipped. Donna's tiny body relaxed against Wisdom's chest, her little fists unclenching for the first time in hours. "How did you—" Graham stared in amazement, his eyes filling with tears of relief, and something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Sometimes babies can sense things," Wisdom said gently, swaying slightly as she held Donna. "She knows you're grieving, and babies absorb that energy. She needs to feel peace before she can give it back to you." Graham watched in wonder as Wisdom moved through his living room with natural grace, humming a soft melody that seemed to wrap around them like a warm blanket. In the moonlight streaming through the windows, she looked ethereal, almost otherworldly, like the angel he'd thought her to be at the cemetery. "The soup smells incredible," he said, following her as she settled onto the couch with Donna still peaceful in her arms. "Chicken and herb with love." Wisdom smiled. "My grandmother's recipe. She always said food made with love could heal anything." She paused, looking down at Donna's now calm face. "I also brought lavender tea. It helps with sleep and anxiety." They moved to the kitchen, where Wisdom somehow managed to serve the soup one-handed while continuing to hold Donna. The kitchen, which had felt cold and foreign to Graham since Sarah's death, suddenly felt warm and alive again. Steam rose from the bowls, carrying with it the scent of comfort and care. "You don't have to do this," Graham said, as they settled at the small dining table with lit candles Wisdom had found in Sarah's collection. "Take care of us, I mean. You have your own grief to deal with." Wisdom's eyes met his across the candlelit table, and in them he saw depths of pain that matched his own. "Maybe taking care of you is how I deal with mine." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, Donna sleeping peacefully in Wisdom's arms, as if she'd finally found the missing piece of her puzzle. The soup was extraordinary, rich and warming, tasting of herbs and comfort, and the kind of love that only comes from hands that know how to heal. "Tell me about her," Wisdom said finally, her voice soft in the candlelight. "About Sarah, what was she like?" Graham's spoon paused halfway to his mouth, and for a moment he thought the question might break him. But something in Wisdom's tone, the genuine caring in her eyes, made him want to share instead of retreat. He began, then stopped, searching for words that could possibly capture the woman who had been his whole world. "She was laughter, pure, infectious laughter. I met her at an art gallery downtown. I was there for work, photographing pieces for a client's website, and she was there with friends, just enjoying the art." His eyes grew distant, lost in the memory. "I heard her laugh before I saw her. It was like music, this bright, joyful sound that cut through all the pretentious art world chatter. When I turned around, she was standing in front of this massive abstract painting, just glowing with happiness." "What happened then?" Wisdom asked gently, shifting Donna to a more comfortable position. I walked over and asked what she saw in the painting that made her so happy. Most people would have given some intellectual response about composition or meaning. But Sarah... Graham smiled, the first real smile that had crossed his face since the cemetery. Sarah said, "It looks like someone threw joy at a canvas and let it stick wherever it wanted to." And I knew right then that I wanted to spend the rest of my life seeing the world through her eyes. Wisdom's expression softened with understanding. "She sounds wonderful. How long were you together?" 5 years total, married for 3. We tried to have a baby for 2 years before Donna came along. Sarah was so excited when we found out she was pregnant. She started buying baby clothes at 6 weeks, even though I told her it was too early. She said she couldn't help herself. She was just too happy to wait. Graham's voice cracked slightly, and Wisdom reached across the table to squeeze his hand. Her touch was warm, grounding, and somehow it gave him the strength to continue. She had names picked out, nursery themes planned, lullabies she wanted to sing. She used to talk to Donna every night when she was still in the womb, telling her stories about all the adventures they'd have together. He looked down at his sleeping, a daughter. She never got to hold her, never got to tell her a single story. Wisdom's eyes filled with tears, and she brought his hand to her lips, pressing a gentle kiss to his knuckles. "She's holding her now," she whispered. "Every time Donna smiles, every time she feels loved, Sarah is holding her." The words hit Graham like a wave of comfort he hadn't known he needed. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt like maybe, somehow, his wife wasn't completely gone. "What about River?" he asked, wanting to shift the focus from his pain to hers. "Tell me about him." Wisdom's face transformed, becoming luminous with love and loss intertwined. "River was music itself," she said, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. Not just because he was a musician, but because everything about him had rhythm and melody. The way he walked, the way he laughed, even the way he made coffee in the morning. She paused to sip her lavender tea, the steam carrying the soothing scent between them. He was a jazz guitarist, played in small clubs around the city, not famous or anything, just pure talent and pure joy. He could make his guitar weep or sing or dance, depending on his mood. "How did you meet?" "At the hospital, actually. He came to the pediatric ward to play for the children. Volunteers did it once a month. I was working a double shift, exhausted and stressed. And then I heard this music floating down the hallway. It was like sunshine in sound." Wisdom smiled at the memory. "I followed it to the playroom and found this beautiful man with gentle eyes, surrounded by sick children who were all smiling and swaying to his music." "When did you know?" Graham asked, genuinely curious about this woman who seemed to carry love like a lamp in the darkness. "When he proposed," Wisdom laughed softly. "He wrote me a song, actually wrote me a song, with my name in the lyrics and everything. He played it at the same hospital where we met, in front of all the children and staff. The chorus went, 'Wisdom moon, light my way through the darkness and into day.' It was terrible and beautiful and perfect all at once." Graham found himself smiling, captivated by the image of this woman being serenaded by a man who understood that love was worth making a fool of yourself for. "How long were you married?" 4 years. We were trying to have children too, actually. River wanted a house full of little musicians." Her voice caught slightly. "Car accident last week. Some teenager texting while driving ran a red light. River was gone instantly." The words hung heavy in the candlelit air, and Graham felt a kinship with this woman that went beyond sympathy. They had both lost their futures in the span of a single heartbeat. 1 week apart, he said quietly. "We lost them 1 week apart." "I know," Wisdom whispered. "I've been thinking about that since the cemetery. What are the odds?" "It feels like fate," Graham finished. They sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the impossible coincidence that had brought them together. In grief, Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, and the moonlight continued to pour through the windows like a blessing. And then Donna stirred in Wisdom's arms and made a small, contented sound. Not crying, not fussing, just a soft, little noise that spoke of peace and security. Wisdom began to hum again, the same melody she'd been humming when she first took the baby, and something magical happened. Donna smiled. Not the reflexive facial movements newborns sometimes make, but a real, genuine, first smile. Her tiny lips curved upward, and her eyes, Sarah's eyes, Graham's eyes, crinkled slightly at the corners. Both adults froze, staring down at this perfect little miracle in wonder. "Did she just—" Graham whispered. "Her first smile," Wisdom breathed, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, sweet baby girl, your first smile." Graham felt his heart crack wide open, spilling love and pain and hope all over the candle-lit kitchen. This was what Sarah should have seen. This was the moment they should have shared together, marveling at their daughter's first expression of joy. But instead, he was sharing it with this incredible woman who had appeared in his life like an angel of mercy, who held his daughter like she was precious, who made her smile when he could only make her cry. "Thank you," he whispered, reaching out to touch Donna's cheek as she continued to beam up at Wisdom. "Thank you for giving me this moment." Wisdom looked up at him, her face wet with tears but radiant with joy. "Thank you for letting me be here. For it." In the moonlight, surrounded by the scent of lavender tea and the lingering warmth of homemade soup, Graham felt something shift inside his chest. It wasn't the desperate, drowning grief that had consumed him for the past week. It was something gentler, something that acknowledged the pain while making room for the possibility of healing. Looking at Wisdom Moon, holding his daughter in the candlelight, seeing Donna's first smile bloom under her gentle care, Graham began to understand that sometimes love doesn't end when someone dies. Sometimes it transforms into something entirely new, something that honors what was lost, while creating space for what might be found. The moon continued to shine through the windows, blessing this small family that hadn't existed an hour ago, as three hearts began the slow, beautiful work of healing together. Chapter 3. Gardens of Grace. Spring was awakening around Graham's house with gentle renewal, and with it came Wisdom Moon, arriving each morning as naturally as sunrise. 2 weeks had passed since their moonlit evening, and what had begun as occasional visits had evolved into something essential. Graham stood at his kitchen window watching Wisdom's car pull into the driveway at exactly 8:30, as it had every morning for the past week. She emerged carrying a different treasure each day. Today, it was a basket filled with flowering plants, their blooms bright against the grey morning. Her presence had transformed his house from a mausoleum of grief into something that resembled a home again, filled with the scents of fresh bread, lavender and hope. The front door opened without a knock. They'd passed that formality days ago, and Wisdom's voice drifted through the house like music. "Good morning, sweet family," she called out, a greeting that never failed to make Graham's heart skip a beat. The casual way she included herself in their unit, the natural assumption that they belonged together, felt both thrilling and terrifying. "In the kitchen," Graham called back, bouncing Donna gently as she fussed in his arms. The baby had been restless all morning, as if sensing some change in the air, some shift in the energy around them. Wisdom appeared in the doorway, her face lit with the kind of smile that could chase away storms. She wore a flowing green dress that complemented her dark skin beautifully, and her hair was pulled back with small white flowers tucked behind her ears. She looked like a goddess of spring, bringing renewal wherever she stepped. "Someone's having a grumpy morning," she observed, setting down her basket and immediately reaching for Donna. The baby settled the moment she was in Wisdom's arms. a transformation that still amazed Graham every time he witnessed it. "She's been fussy since dawn," Graham said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I think she knows something I don't." Wisdom studied Donna's face with the practiced eye of a pediatric nurse, gently pressing her lips to the baby's forehead to check for fever. "She's not sick," she murmured, "but she might be going through a growth spurt. Babies get restless when their bodies are changing." The casual intimacy of the gesture, checking his daughter's temperature with her lips, sent warmth flooding through Graham's chest. It was such a maternal action, so natural and caring, that for a moment he could almost pretend this was how it had always been, how it was supposed to be. "I brought friends for the house," Wisdom said, nodding toward her basket. "Flowering plants. I thought we could create something beautiful together." Graham peered into the basket and found an array of potted plants, roses, sunflowers, jasmine, and herbs he couldn't identify. Each one was healthy and vibrant, chosen with obvious care and attention. "They're beautiful," he said, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "But I should warn you, I don't have much of a green thumb. Sarah was the gardener in our relationship." Something flickered across Wisdom's face at the mention of Sarah. Not jealousy or discomfort, but a kind of reverent acknowledgement. She had this remarkable ability to honor his grief instead of competing with it, to make space for Sarah's memory while still creating something new. "That's okay," she said softly. "I have enough green thumb for both of us. Besides, gardens are about more than just keeping plants alive. They're about creating sacred spaces, places where healing can happen." She moved to the sliding glass door that led to the backyard, still holding Donna, and Graham followed. The yard beyond was a testament to neglect. Overgrown grass, empty flower beds, a general air of abandonment that reflected the state of his life before Wisdom arrived. "Sarah had plans for that space," Graham said, looking out at the potential garden. "She sketched designs, made lists of plants she wanted to grow. She was going to start planting after Donna was born, when she had maternity leave to focus on it." Wisdom turned to him, her eyes soft with understanding. What if we brought her vision to life? What if we created the garden she dreamed of, as a way to honor her memory and create something beautiful for Donna to grow up in? The suggestion took Graham's breath away. The idea of fulfilling Sarah's dreams, of creating beauty from her plans, felt like the most perfect tribute he could imagine. "I have her sketches," he said quietly, "her plant lists, everything. Then that's where we'll start." Within an hour, they had spread Sarah's garden plans across the kitchen table, the detailed drawings revealing the depth of her vision. She had designed a memory garden, roses along the back fence, sunflowers creating a natural border, herbs arranged in a spiral pattern around a central space meant for a bench where she could sit and watch Donna play. She had beautiful taste, Wisdom said, studying the sketches with professional appreciation. Look how she planned the colors to bloom in sequence, so there would always be something flowering throughout the growing season. Graham traced his finger along the pencil lines of Sarah's handwriting, remembering how excited she'd been while creating these plans. She spent hours on these, said she wanted Donna to grow up surrounded by beauty, to learn about life and growth through watching the garden change with the seasons. Then that's exactly what we'll give her. They spent the morning transforming the neglected backyard into the foundation of Sarah's vision. Wisdom worked with the confidence of someone who understood soil and seasons, teaching Graham to test the earth's pH, to read the patterns of sunlight and shade, to understand which plants would thrive where. "Gardening is about partnership," she explained as they knelt together in the dirt, preparing the first flower bed. Donna lay on a soft blanket nearby, gurgling happily at the sky. You can't force plants to grow where they don't want to be. You have to listen to what they need, work with their nature instead of against it. Graham found himself wondering if she was talking about more than just plants. As they worked, Wisdom shared stories of the children she'd cared for during her years as a pediatric nurse. Her hands moved with gentle precision as she explained how gardening had been therapy for her young patients, how watching seeds grow into flowers had helped them understand that healing was possible, that beautiful things could emerge from dark soil. There was one little boy, Trevor, who came to us after a terrible car accident, she said, carefully transplanting one of Sarah's chosen rose bushes. He'd lost the use of his legs and was so angry, so lost. The other nurses didn't know what to do with him. What happened? Graham asked, genuinely engaged in her story as he worked to prepare the soil beside her. I started bringing him seeds from my own garden, tiny ones, just simple flowers, and I let him plant them in little pots by his hospital window. At first he did it just to humor me, but then... Wisdom's face lit up with the memory. Then the first green shoots appeared, and suddenly he had something to live for again, something that depended on him, that needed his care to survive. Did he recover? He learned to walk again, yes. But more importantly, he learned that growth is possible, even after trauma, that beautiful things can come from the darkest times. She paused in her work to look at Graham directly. Sometimes we all need to remember that. As the afternoon progressed, they established the basic structure of the garden. The roses were planted along the back fence, just as Sarah had envisioned. The sunflower seeds were sown in the area that would become a natural border. The herb spiral was outlined with small stones they found scattered around the yard. Working in the soil together felt like a meditation, a way of processing grief while creating something beautiful. Their hands often brushed as they reached for the same tool or worked on adjacent sections, and each casual touch sent electricity through Graham's system. There's something magical about working with your hands in the earth, Wisdom mused as they took a break, sitting on the grass near Donna's blanket. It connects you to something larger than yourself, something timeless. Graham watched as she gently massaged dirt from beneath her fingernails, her movements graceful even in this simple task. Bits of soil clung to her green dress, and her hair had escaped its flowers to curl around her face in the spring humidity. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with perfection and everything to do with authenticity. "Can I ask you something?" he said, surprised by his own boldness. "Of course. Why are you doing this? All of this, the cooking, the garden, taking care of Donna and me. You barely know us, and you're dealing with your own loss. I need to understand." Wisdom was quiet for a long moment, watching Donna's tiny fists wave at the clouds above them. When she spoke, her voice was soft but certain. "When River died, I felt like my heart had been torn out of my chest. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't imagine how I was supposed to keep living without him. The only thing that made sense was work, taking care of other people's children, using my hands to heal instead of just to grieve." She turned to look at him, her eyes holding depths of pain and wisdom that took his breath away. "But then I saw you at the cemetery holding Donna in the rain, and something shifted inside me. It wasn't pity or charity. It was recognition. I saw two people who needed what I needed, to remember that love doesn't end when someone dies. It transforms. It finds new ways to express itself." Graham felt his throat tighten with emotion. "And you think taking care of us is love expressing itself?" "I think River would want me to love again," Wisdom said simply. "Not to replace him, but to honor him by continuing to live fully, to give and receive care. And I think Sarah would want the same for you." As if summoned by the mention of her mother's name, Donna made a soft cooing sound and smiled up at them, both. The sight of her tiny face, so perfect and trusting, filled Graham with a fierce protectiveness that went beyond his own grief. She deserves to grow up knowing what love looks like, he said quietly. Yes, she does. And not just romantic love. The love of chosen family, of people who commit to each other's well-being regardless of blood or obligation. The love that says, I will be here for you no matter what. They spent the rest of the afternoon planting and planning, their hands working together in the soil while Donna dozed peacefully nearby. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, they sat back to admire their work. The garden was far from finished, but the foundation was there. Neat rows where vegetables would grow, designated spaces for Sarah's favorite. Flowers, pathways that would eventually be lined with herbs and decorative stones. It was a place where beauty would flourish, where Donna would learn about growth and seasons and the way beautiful things could emerge from dark earth. It's going to be magnificent, Wisdom said, her voice full of satisfaction. Sarah would have loved it, Graham replied, and for the first time since her death, saying his wife's name didn't feel like swallowing glass. It felt like honoring her, like keeping her dreams alive in a tangible way. As they gathered their tools and prepared to go inside, Wisdom made a suggestion that would change everything. What if I moved in? Graham's hands stilled on the gardening. Tools, his heart hammering against his ribs. Just temporarily, she continued quickly, seeming to sense his shock. To help with the night feedings. To be here for Donna during the day while you work. It would be practical more than anything. Else practical. The word hung in the air between them, both of them knowing it was only part of the truth. What was growing between them in this garden, in these shared meals and quiet moments, was anything but practical. Graham started, then stopped, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the decision she was offering him. Think about it, Wisdom said gently, picking up Donna and cradling her against her chest. There's no rush, but the offer is there if you want it. As they walked back toward the house, Graham's mind raced with possibilities and fears in equal measure. The thought of Wisdom living here, of waking up to her presence every morning, filled him with a longing so intense it almost frightened him. But it also filled him with hope. In the gathering twilight, surrounded by the beginnings of Sarah's dream, garden and the woman who was helping him bring it to life, Graham began to understand that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant learning to love again without losing what came before. The garden would grow, season by season, becoming more beautiful with time. And maybe, just maybe, so would they. As Wisdom carried Donna toward the house, humming softly in the growing darkness, Graham felt his heart crack open just a little bit more. Not breaking this time, but expanding, making room for something new, to take root and flourish, something that looked remarkably like a future worth living. Chapter 4. Dancing in Starlight. The house stood silent at 2 in the morning, but Graham wasn't sleeping. He sat in the nursery's rocking chair, holding Donna against his chest as she screamed with the relentless fury that only a colicky baby could summon. Her tiny body was rigid with discomfort, her face red and streaked with tears that broke his heart with every drop. "Shh, baby girl, please," he whispered, his voice cracking with exhaustion and desperation. "Tell Daddy what's wrong. Tell me how to fix this." He'd tried everything. Feeding her, changing her, burping her, checking her temperature. He'd walked her around the house, sung every lullaby he could remember, even attempted some made-up songs that had only seemed to make her cry harder. Zara's baby books lay open around the room, their helpful advice mocking him from every page. It had been like this for 3 hours. 3 hours of helpless frustration as his daughter suffered and he could do nothing to comfort her. The sound of her cries echoed through the house like an accusation. "You're not enough. You're failing her. You don't know what you're doing." Graham felt tears burning behind his own eyes as he stood and began pacing again, bouncing Donna gently in. His arms, The motion sometimes helped, but tonight even that failed to soothe her. He was running on 4 hours of sleep over the past 2 days, surviving on coffee and determination, and the slowly fading hope that he could figure out how to be the father Donna deserved. Outside, the spring night was perfect. Clear skies, filled with stars, a gentle breeze that rustled the new leaves on the trees they'd planted in Sarah's memory garden. The contrast between the peace outside and the chaos in his arms felt like cosmic mockery. And then, like an answer to a prayer he'd been too proud to voice, headlights swept across the nursery window. Graham's heart leaped as he recognized Wisdom's car pulling into his driveway. She'd been staying later each evening since her offer to move in, leaving only after Donna was settled for the night. But it was past midnight now. She should have been home, asleep in her own bed, dealing with her own grief instead of rushing to rescue him from his failures. The front door opened quietly, and her voice drifted up the stairs like a lifeline. "Graham, I'm here." He wanted to call down to her, to let her know where they were, but his throat was tight with emotion and exhaustion. Instead, he heard her soft footsteps on the stairs, moving with the confident grace of someone who belonged in this house, who understood its rhythms and needs. Wisdom appeared in the nursery doorway, her hair loose around her shoulders and her face soft with sleep. She wore simple pajamas, cotton pants and a tank top, but somehow managed to look graceful and calming in the dim light. "How long has she been crying?" she asked softly, moving into the room without hesitation. 3 hours, Graham admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what's wrong. I've tried everything and she just—" His words trailed off as fresh tears threatened to overwhelm him. Wisdom's heart visibly broke at the sight of them both. This exhausted father and his inconsolable daughter, both suffering in their own way. Without a word, she moved to the window and began adjusting the curtains, dimming the already soft light in the room. "Colic," she said gently, returning to his side. "Babies go through phases where their digestive systems are still developing, and it causes them pain they can't understand or communicate. It's not your fault, and it's not something you're doing wrong." The relief that flooded through Graham at her words was almost overwhelming. He'd been torturing himself with the possibility that he was failing Donna in some fundamental way, that a real parent would know instinctively how to comfort their child. "May I?" Wisdom asked, extending her arms. Graham nodded gratefully, and the moment Donna was transferred to Wisdom's embrace, something shifted in the baby's cries. Not silence, not yet, but a subtle change in pitch, as if she recognized the hands that held her. But instead of trying to quiet Donna immediately, Wisdom did something unexpected. She moved to the corner of the room where Graham's laptop sat on a small table, and with one hand she opened it and navigated to a music streaming service. "What are you doing?" Graham asked, watching in confusion as she scrolled through playlists. "Trust me," Wisdom said with a small smile, selecting something that made soft jazz music begin to flow from the laptop's speakers. The sound was gentle, barely audible over Donna's cries, but it added a different energy to the room. Then Wisdom began to move, not walking or bouncing, but actually swaying, letting the rhythm of the music guide her movements as she held Donna close to her chest. Her bare feet seemed to glide across the nursery floor, and her body moved with a natural grace that was mesmerizing to watch. "Sometimes babies need to feel the music in their bodies," she explained softly as she danced, her voice carrying over. "The jazz melody. River taught me this. He used to say that rhythm is the first language we learn, the sound of our mother's heartbeat in the womb." Graham watched in amazement as Wisdom continued to sway and turn, holding Donna securely while moving to the gentle beat of the saxophone that poured from the speakers. Her movements were fluid, confident, like she'd been born knowing how to dance away pain, and slowly, gradually, Donna's cries began to soften. The motion helps their digestive systems, Wisdom murmured, her voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality as she moved. But more than that, it helps them remember what safety feels like. The rhythm, the warmth, the gentle movement. It mimics being in the womb. Graham found himself moving closer, drawn by the magic he was witnessing. Wisdom's presence filled the nursery with peace, transforming what had been a place of frustrated exhaustion into something sacred and healing. "Dance with us," Wisdom said suddenly, looking up at him with eyes that sparkled in the dim light. "Sometimes babies need to feel their parents united in caring for them." Graham hesitated, self-consciousness warring with his desperate desire to help his daughter. "I don't really know how to—" "There's no right or wrong way," Wisdom interrupted gently. "Just move with the music. Let it guide you." Tentatively, Graham stepped closer and placed his hands on Wisdom's waist, careful not to disturb Donna, who was finally beginning to quiet in her arms. The moment his hands touched her, he felt an electric current pass between them. Not just attraction, though that was certainly there, but something deeper, a sense of completion, of pieces fitting together in ways that made perfect sense. They began to move together, swaying to the gentle rhythm of the jazz music, while Donna relaxed more and more in Wisdom's arms. Graham had never been much of a dancer, but with Wisdom guiding him, it felt natural, effortless. Their bodies moved in harmony, three hearts beating in sync as the music washed over them. "This is beautiful," Graham whispered, amazed by the transformation. In the room's energy, where there had been chaos and frustration, now there was peace and connection. "River used to say that music was the universal healer," Wisdom replied softly, her breath warm against his ear as they swayed together. "That no matter what was broken, the right song could help mend it." As they danced, Donna's cries faded to soft whimpers, then to gentle breathing. Her tiny body relaxed completely against Wisdom's chest, and her eyes began to flutter closed. The relief Graham felt was so intense, it almost brought him to his knees. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice thick with gratitude and emotion. "How did you know exactly what she needed?" Wisdom looked up at him, their faces close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "Because I know what it feels like to be inconsolable," she said simply. "To have pain you can't explain or escape. Sometimes the only thing that helps is feeling held, feeling like you're not alone in the darkness." The words hit Graham like a revelation. This woman, this incredible woman who had appeared in his life like a miracle, understood not just how to care for Donna, but how to heal the wounds that couldn't be seen. They continued to dance as Donna slipped into peaceful sleep, but neither wanted to break the spell that had settled over them. The music played on, and they moved together in the starlight streaming through the nursery windows, their bodies finding a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. "I could do this forever," Graham whispered, and he meant it. In Wisdom's arms, holding his sleeping daughter between them, he felt more complete than he had since Sarah's death. "So could I," Wisdom admitted, her voice barely audible. When Donna was finally deeply asleep, they gently transferred her to her crib, working together, with the seamless coordination of partners who had been caring for children together for years instead of weeks. But even after the baby was settled, they didn't separate. Instead, they stood together beside the crib, watching Donna sleep peacefully for the first time in hours. Wisdom's hand found Graham's in the darkness, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Thank you," Graham said, bringing their joined hands to his lips to press a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." "You would have figured it out," Wisdom said with quiet confidence. "You're a good father, Graham. Donna is lucky to have you." "And she's lucky to have you," Graham replied, turning to face her fully, In the dim light of the nursery, with starlight painting her features in silver, Wisdom looked ethereal, like something too beautiful to be real. "Graham," she whispered, and something in her voice made his heart race. They were standing close now, closer than they'd ever been except while dancing. He could smell the soft scent of her shampoo, could see the way her lips parted slightly as she looked up at him. The air between them crackled with possibility, with all the things they hadn't said, all the feelings they'd been carefully dancing. "Around, I should probably go," Wisdom said softly, but she made no move to leave. "It's late, and you need to sleep." "Stay," Graham heard himself say, the word escaping before he could think better of it. "Please, just stay." Wisdom's eyes searched his face, looking for something she must have found, because she nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll stay." They moved downstairs together, their movements careful and quiet, to avoid waking Donna. In the living room, Wisdom settled onto the couch while Graham gathered pillows and a blanket from the hall closet. "You don't have to sleep on the couch," Graham said as he returned with the bedding. "The guest room is made up, or you could—" He trailed off, not quite brave enough to finish the thought, but Wisdom seemed to understand. "The couch is perfect," she said gently. "I want to be close enough to hear if Donna needs us again." Us. The word sent warmth flooding through Graham's chest. They had become an us without him quite realizing when it happened. As Wisdom settled under the blanket, Graham lingered nearby, reluctant to leave her even though he knew he should. The house felt different with her in it, warmer and more alive, like it had remembered how to be a home again. "Graham?" Wisdom's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes? This, what happened tonight, what's been happening between us? It doesn't dishonor Sarah's memory, you know that, right?" The words hit him like a revelation. He'd been carrying guilt about his growing feelings for Wisdom, worried that caring for her meant betraying Sarah's memory. But hearing Wisdom say it, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, he realized she was right. "How did you know I needed to hear that?" he asked. "Because I needed to hear it too," she admitted. "About River, about us." Graham knelt beside the couch, bringing himself to her eye level. "Wisdom, I know," she whispered, reaching out to touch his face gently. "I know. We don't have to name it yet. We don't have to decide what it means. But we also don't have to pretend it isn't happening." He leaned into her touch, closing his eyes as her fingers traced the line of his jaw. "What is happening?" He asked softly. "Something beautiful," Wisdom replied. "Something that honors the love we've lost while making space for the love we're finding." They stayed like that for a long moment, her hand on his face, their eyes locked in the dim light from the street lamps outside. Then Graham leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, a gesture of tenderness and promise that said everything they weren't ready to voice. "Sweet dreams, Wisdom Moon," he whispered. "Sweet dreams, Graham Luckin." As Graham climbed the stairs to his bedroom, he felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death. Peace, not the absence of grief, but the presence of hope alongside it. Upstairs, Donna slept peacefully in her crib, soothed by the magic of music and movement and love. And downstairs, Wisdom Moon curled up on his couch, having transformed their night of struggle into something sacred. Through the windows, stars continued to shine down on their small family, blessing this moment when three wounded hearts began to beat in harmony, creating a rhythm that would carry them through the darkness and into the light of whatever came next. In the quiet house, surrounded by the lingering scent of jasmine from the garden and the soft echo of jazz music, Graham fell asleep to the sound of peaceful breathing from the two people who had become his whole world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new steps in the delicate dance of healing and love. But tonight, they had found each other in the starlight, and it was enough. Chapter 5. First Light of Love. 3 weeks had passed since the night of dancing in starlight. 3 weeks of Wisdom's presence becoming essential to their daily rhythm. Graham stood in his studio, surrounded by sketches and digital renderings, putting finishing touches on what he knew would be his masterpiece. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, and from downstairs he could hear Wisdom's voice singing softly to Donna as she prepared their evening meal. The art piece had consumed him for days. Born from an inspiration so powerful, it had woken him from sleep with its urgency. Now, as he stepped back to examine the final result, his heart hammered with anticipation and nervousness. This wasn't just art. This was a declaration, a statement of everything he felt, but hadn't yet found the courage to voice. The image was ethereal and powerful, a magnificent oak tree with roots that seemed to glow with inner light, its branches reaching toward a sky painted in shades of sunset and dawn. Beneath the tree stood 4 figures, rendered with loving detail that had taken him hours to perfect. Sarah stood to the left, her face radiant with the joy he remembered so well, her hand extended in blessing. She wore the white dress from their wedding day, and her hair caught the painted light like spun gold. Beside her, a man with gentle eyes and a guitar slung across his shoulder, River, drawn from the descriptions Wisdom had shared during their late-night conversations. His expression was peaceful, musical notes seeming to float around him like visible melodies, and beneath the protective canopy of the tree, very much alive and present, stood 3 figures: Graham himself, holding baby Donna, and Wisdom, with her arms open wide as if embracing them both. But it was more than just a family portrait. It was a vision of love transcending death, of guardian angels watching over new beginnings, of 4 souls united across the boundaries of life and loss. The technique was the best work he'd ever done. But more than that, the emotion captured in every brushstroke spoke of love in all its forms, passionate, protective, healing, eternal. It was his gift to Wisdom, his way of telling her that including River in their story didn't diminish what they were building together, but made it sacred. Graham, Wisdom's voice drifted up from downstairs, warm with affection and tinged with curiosity. Dinner's ready? And Donna's getting impatient for her evening story. Coming, he called back, his voice catching slightly with emotion. Taking a deep breath, he carefully lifted the canvas, still slightly damp with the final touches of paint, and carried it downstairs. Wisdom stood in the kitchen with Donna balanced on her hip, stirring something that smelled like heaven and herbs. She wore a flowing yellow sundress that made her skin glow, and her hair was pulled back with small flowers from their garden. The sight of her in his kitchen, so natural and right, still took his breath away after all these weeks. Perfect timing, she said with a smile, turning toward him. I made that pasta dish you mentioned liking, and Donna helped by... Her words died as her eyes fell on the canvas in his hands. Graham watched her face transform as she took in the image, her expression shifting from curiosity to wonder to something deeper than either. Her free hand rose to cover her mouth, and tears began to pool in her eyes. Graham, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Is that River? He confirmed softly, setting the canvas carefully on the counter where she could see it fully. I painted him from your descriptions. I hope I got him right. Wisdom handed Donna to him wordlessly and moved closer to the painting, her hands hovering just inches from the surface as if she were afraid to touch it. Her eyes traced every detail, River's gentle smile, the way Graham had captured the music that seemed to emanate from his very being, the protective love in his painted eyes as he watched over the family below. You gave him his guitar, she breathed, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. And the way you painted his hands. Oh God, Graham, you even got his hands right. Those long fingers that could make magic on the strings. Graham's throat tightened as he watched her reaction. I wanted him to be part of our story, he said quietly, bouncing Donna gently as the baby babbled approvingly at the colorful painting. I wanted to show that loving us doesn't mean forgetting him, that what we're building together honors what came before. Wisdom turned to look at him then, her face wet with tears, but radiant with something that looked like joy and gratitude, and love all tangled together. How did you know? She asked, her voice breaking. How did you know exactly what I needed to see? Because I needed to see it too, Graham admitted. Sarah's been in my heart through all of this, blessing what we're finding together. I needed River to be there too, giving his approval, showing that love doesn't end, it expands. The golden hour light streaming through the kitchen windows seemed to intensify, as if the universe itself was highlighting this moment. It caught the tears on Wisdom's cheeks and turned them to liquid diamonds, illuminated the painting until the figures seemed almost alive, blessed the three of them, standing there in the warm kitchen as something sacred passed between them. I've been so afraid, Wisdom whispered, moving closer to Graham and Donna, afraid that loving you meant betraying River's memory. Afraid that what I feel for you isn't real because it grew from grief. Afraid that I'm not worthy of this happiness. Graham shifted Donna to one arm and reached out to touch Wisdom's face, his thumb catching her tears. And now I see what you see, she said, her voice growing stronger. That love doesn't diminish when it's shared. That River and Sarah aren't gone. They're part of what we're creating together. They're the foundation that makes this possible. The baby in his arms began to fuss softly, and Wisdom instinctively reached for her, their hands brushing as they transferred Donna between them. But this time, instead of the careful distance they'd been maintaining, Graham didn't pull away. His hand covered Wisdom's on the baby's back, and suddenly they were standing closer than they'd ever been, connected by their shared care for Donna and the electricity that had been building between them for weeks. Wisdom, Graham said softly, his voice rough with emotion. I love you. The words hung in the golden air between them, simple and complex all at once. Not a desperate declaration born of grief or loneliness, but a mature acknowledgement of something that had grown slowly, naturally, rooted in friendship and care and mutual understanding. I love you too, Wisdom replied, her voice steady despite the tears still flowing down her cheeks. I love you, and I love Donna, and I love the family we're becoming together. They moved toward each other as if drawn by gravity. Baby Donna, secure between them, and when their lips met, it was with the kind of kiss that rewrites the story of your life. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper as they realized that this wasn't betrayal or replacement, but completion. It was a kiss that tasted of tears and hope, of endings and beginnings, of love that had learned to multiply instead of diminish. Donna chose that moment to make a happy gurgling sound, and they broke apart laughing, looking down at her bright eyes and perfect smile. I think she approves, Wisdom said, her voice soft with wonder. Sarah would have loved you, Graham said suddenly, the words coming from some deep well of certainty. She would have loved your kindness, your strength, the way you care for Donna, like she's your own. And River would have loved you, Wisdom replied. He would have respected the way you honor Sarah's memory while making room for new love. He would have been grateful that you're helping me heal. They stood there in the golden kitchen, holding each other and Donna, surrounded by the scent of herbs from their garden and the lingering aroma of the dinner Wisdom had prepared. The painting watched over them from the counter, four souls united in love that transcended life and death. What happens now? Graham asked, his forehead resting against hers. Now we love each other, Wisdom said simply, fully, completely, without fear or guilt, We build a life together that honors the past while embracing the future. And Donna? Donna gets to grow up knowing that love is infinite, Wisdom said, pressing a gentle kiss to the baby's forehead. That families can be created in beautiful, unexpected ways. That her mother's love lives on through the people who choose to care for her. As if understanding the conversation, Donna reached out with her tiny hands, grasping at the air between her father and the woman who had become her chosen mother. Wisdom caught one little fist while Graham captured the other, and they stood, connected by the baby who had brought them together, by the love that had grown from their shared commitment to her well-being. "I want to move in," Wisdom said suddenly, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Not just to help with Donna, but because I want to build a life with you, both of you." Graham's heart soared at her words. "Are you sure? It's fast, and people who matter will understand," Wisdom interrupted gently, "and people who don't understand don't matter. Life is too short, and love is too precious to waste time worrying about other people's timelines." "Then yes," Graham said, his voice filled with joy and certainty. "Yes to all of it. Yes to moving in. Yes to building a life together. Yes to whatever comes next." They sealed the agreement with another kiss. Longer this time, deeper, full of promise and passion, and the kind of love that had learned to bloom in the soil of loss. When they finally broke apart, the sun was setting outside their windows, painting the world in shades of rose and gold. "The painting," Wisdom said suddenly, turning back to the canvas, "it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Where should we hang it?" "Above the fireplace in the living room," Graham said without hesitation, "where we can see it every day, where Donna can grow up knowing she's part of something sacred." As they moved around the kitchen, reheating their dinner and settling into their evening routine, the painting seemed to glow in the fading light. The four figures beneath the tree watched over them with expressions of love and blessing, as if Sarah and River were giving their approval to this new chapter in the love story that had begun with such tragedy and was now blooming into something beautiful. "Tomorrow I'll start moving my things over," Wisdom said as they sat down to eat, Donna content in her high chair between them. "Just the essentials at first, but gradually this will become our home." "Our home," Graham repeated, testing the words and finding them perfect. "I like the sound of that." Outside, the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and from the memory garden they'd planted together came the scent of jasmine and roses. Carried on, the evening breeze through open windows. It was the smell of growth and renewal, of beautiful things emerging from dark soil, of love that had learned to multiply instead of diminish. As they shared their meal in the warm kitchen, surrounded by evidence of the life they were building, together, Graham felt something he had thought was lost forever, complete happiness, not the desperate grasping at joy that comes from trying to forget pain, but the deep contentment that comes from integrating loss into love, from understanding that the heart has infinite capacity for caring. The painting continued to watch over them, a reminder that love stories don't always end with death. Sometimes they transform, sometimes they expand, to include new chapters written by different hands, but with the same dedication to cherishing what matters most. In the golden light of their kitchen, with Donna babbling happily between them and the future spreading out like an endless garden of possibilities, Graham and Wisdom began the beautiful work of building a love that honored the past while embracing tomorrow. The first light of their love had dawned, and it was more radiant than either had dared to dream. Chapter 6: Symphony of Souls. Spring had fully awakened the world around them, and with it came a transformation so complete that Graham sometimes felt he was living in a different universe entirely. 2 weeks had passed since Wisdom officially moved in, and their house had evolved from a shrine to grief into a symphony of living, breathing love. River's vintage records nestled beside Sarah's favorite books, Wisdom's nursing texts sharing shelf space with Graham's design portfolios. Sunday morning arrived wrapped in golden sunlight and the scent of jasmine from their flourishing memory. A garden. Graham woke to gentle humming from downstairs, a melody that seemed to call his soul from sleep. Beside him, the bed still held the warmth and subtle scent of Wisdom's presence, though she was already moving through their morning routine. With Donna, they had been sharing his bed for only 3 nights now, a progression that had felt as natural as seasons changing. By the 3rd night, it was simply understood. They belonged together in all ways, without shame or hesitation. Graham padded downstairs barefoot, following the scent of pancakes and fresh coffee toward the kitchen where his family was creating their Sunday morning magic. Wisdom stood at the stove, her hair twisted up with one of Donna's colorful hair ties, wearing one of his old shirts over sleep shorts. At her feet, Donna sat in her bouncy seat, giggling and reaching for soap bubbles that Wisdom was creating between flipping pancakes. The entire scene was choreographed to River's old jazz records, music that had become the soundtrack of their daily life. "Good morning, beautiful souls," Graham said softly. Wisdom turned, her face lighting up with the kind of smile that could power cities. "Perfect timing," she said, rising on her toes to accept his good morning kiss. "The pancakes are almost ready, and Miss Donna has been asking for her daddy." Graham scooped Donna up, marveling at how much she'd grown. At nearly 2 months old, she was becoming more alert and interactive every day, her little personality beginning to shine through. "Good morning, Princess," he murmured against her soft hair. "Did you help Mama Wisdom make breakfast?" The words slipped out naturally, and both adults froze at the significance. Mama Wisdom. They hadn't discussed titles, but the phrase felt so right that it seemed to settle into the air like a benediction. "Mama Wisdom," Wisdom repeated softly, her eyes filling with tears of joy. "I love that." They moved to the kitchen table, where Wisdom had lit candles from Sarah's collection. Steam rose from their bowls, carrying comfort and care. "I have something for you," Wisdom said suddenly, pulling away with barely contained excitement. "A surprise I've been working on." She disappeared briefly, returning with a large portfolio. Her hands trembled slightly as she set it on the table. "What is this?" Graham asked, bouncing Donna gently in his arms. "Open it," Wisdom said simply. Graham lifted the cover and found himself looking at the most beautiful logo design he'd ever seen. It was elegant and flowing, incorporating symbols of healing and growth with text that read, "Healing Hearts Pediatric Clinic, Dr. Wisdom Moon Luckin, Medical Director." "Moon Luckin," Graham breathed, his eyes snapping up to meet hers. "You want to hyphenate our names?" "I want to marry you," Wisdom said simply, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was saying. "I want to be your wife, Donna's legal mother, and I want us to build something beautiful together." Graham stared at the portfolio, his mind reeling. The logo was sophisticated and warm, speaking of professional expertise paired with genuine caring. But more than that, it represented a future he hadn't dared to imagine. "You designed this yourself?" he asked. "I took some design courses in college, but mostly I tried to capture what I wanted the clinic to feel like. Warm, safe, focused on healing rather than just treating illness." Wisdom pointed to various elements. "See how the heart incorporates a tree? That's inspired by your painting. The idea that healing grows from strong roots." Graham felt his throat tighten with emotion. She'd incorporated symbolism from their shared story, making their love part of her professional vision. "Turn the page," Wisdom said softly. The next sheet contained her dreams for the clinic, sketches of warm, welcoming spaces where children could heal surrounded by beauty rather than sterile coldness. It was clear she'd been working on this vision for months, but now it was reimagined as something they would build together. "I want your design expertise," she continued. "I want this to be a partnership in every sense. You handle the visual, identity, the space planning, the way the environment supports healing. I handle the medical side, the patient care. Wisdom," Graham said, his voice thick with amazement. "This is incredible, but are you sure? Marriage, the clinic, taking on Donna legally? That's a lot of life changes all at once." Wisdom reached out to stroke Donna's cheek, her touch gentle and sure. "I've never been more certain of anything. This little girl already feels like my daughter in every way that matters. You already feel like my soulmate, my partner, my home. And this clinic, it's how we take our healing and use it to help other families." She moved to the record player, replacing River's jazz album with something more contemporary but still soulful. "Dance with me," she said, holding out her hand. "Not because Donna needs soothing, but because I want to feel what it's like to dance with my fiancé." Graham's heart stuttered at the word. "Fiancé? If you'll have me," Wisdom said with a smile that could have powered the sun. Graham shifted Donna to one arm and took Wisdom's hand, pulling her close as they began to sway. This time, their dancing wasn't about healing crisis. It was pure celebration, pure joy, pure love, expressing itself through movement. "Yes," he said, as they moved together in their sunlit kitchen. "Yes to all of it. Marriage, the clinic, building a life together that honors where we came from while creating something entirely new." Wisdom's face blazed with happiness as she reached up to cup his face. "Really? You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," Graham replied. "I love you, Wisdom Moon. I want to spend the rest of my life making beautiful things with you. Art, healing, family, memories, all of it." They sealed their engagement with a kiss that was deeper and more passionate than any they'd shared before, their bodies pressed together while Donna babbled happily between them. The music swirled around them, and the morning light painted everything in shades of gold and promise. "When?" Graham asked when they finally broke apart. "Soon," Wisdom said without hesitation. "I don't want to wait. I've already lost so much time to grief and fear. I want to start our real life together as soon as possible." They spent the next hour poring over the clinic plans, their breakfast forgotten as they dove deep into shared vision. Donna entertained herself by grabbing at the papers and making happy sounds, as if approving of the future they were designing. "We could have a memorial wall," Wisdom suggested. "Something that honors the healing power of love that continues after loss." "And a music therapy room," Graham added, "with instruments for kids to explore sound and rhythm as part of their healing." "River would love that," Wisdom said softly. "He always said music was the universal language of healing." As the morning progressed, their conversation flowed from business plans to wedding plans to dreams for Donna's future. They were building more than just a life together. They were creating a legacy of love that would ripple outward to touch other families. "One more surprise," Wisdom said as they cleaned up, moving with choreographed efficiency. She disappeared upstairs briefly, returning with a small velvet box that made Graham's heart race. Inside was a simple but elegant gold ring, engraved with words that took Graham's breath away. "Love multiplies." "It's not traditional for the woman to propose with a ring," Wisdom said, suddenly shy, "but nothing about our love story has been traditional. And I wanted you to have something that represents what we've learned together, that love doesn't diminish when it's shared. It grows." Graham slipped the ring onto his finger, marveling at how perfectly it fit. "It's perfect. Everything about this is perfect." As evening approached and they settled into their routine with Donna, the record player continued to spin River's music, blessing their activities with melody and memory. They moved through their tasks with seamless coordination, their love expressed in practical acts of care and tenderness. "Tonight," Graham said as they tucked Donna into her crib, both leaning over the sleeping baby like devoted parents. "Tonight we celebrate properly." "What did you have in mind?" Wisdom asked, her voice taking on a note that made heat pool in Graham's stomach. "Champagne," he said, pulling her close. "Candles, music, and showing my fiancée exactly how much I love her." They made love that night with passion and tenderness that spoke of complete commitment, complete trust, complete surrender to the love that had grown from unexpected soil. Their bodies moved together with the same rhythm they'd found in dancing, in gardening, in all the daily acts of care that had woven their lives together. Afterward, lying tangled together with moonlight streaming through windows and Donna's peaceful, breathing from the monitor, they whispered plans and promises and dreams until sleep finally claimed them. Outside, the memory garden bloomed in starlight, roses and sunflowers growing side by side in perfect harmony, a living testament to the truth they'd discovered together, that love, real love, doesn't diminish when it's shared. It multiplies, creating infinite circles of healing that ripple outward to bless the world with beauty, hope, and the unshakable. Acknowledge that broken hearts can learn to love again, deeper and truer than ever before. Chapter 7. Storms Before Rainbow. The confrontation arrived without warning on a Tuesday afternoon, disguised as a silver sedan pulling into their driveway. While Graham and Wisdom worked in the garden, they had been planning the final plantings before their wedding, set for the following month, their hands deep in rich soil as they discussed where to place the white roses that would bloom for the ceremony. Donna lay on her favorite blanket nearby, now 3 months old and fascinated by the play of sunlight through the leaves above her. She had grown into the most beautiful baby, with Sarah's delicate features and Graham's expressive green eyes, and her personality was beginning to shine through in bright smiles and infectious giggles that could light up the darkest day. "I think the climbing roses should go along the back fence," Wisdom was saying, her voice warm with contentment as she gestured toward the space they'd cleared. "They'll create a natural backdrop for our wedding photos, and in years to come, Donna can have tea parties under them." Graham smiled at the image, his heart full of love for this woman who thought not just about today but about the memories they would create for their daughter. "And the herb spiral can be expanded here," he added, pointing to an area near the house. "Maybe we can teach Donna to cook with what we grow." "Mama Wisdom teaching me to cook," Wisdom said with a laugh, testing out the words that still felt new and precious on her tongue. "I love the sound of that." They had fallen into such easy domestic bliss over the past weeks, their days filled with wedding planning, clinic preparations, and the simple joys of raising Donna together. The Healing Hearts Pediatric Clinic was set to open in the fall, and Graham had thrown himself into designing a space that would revolutionize how children experienced medical care. Their love had become the foundation for healing that extended far beyond their own family. The sound of car doors slamming cut through their peaceful afternoon like a blade through silk. Graham looked up from the soil, his hands still dirty from planting, and felt his blood turn to ice in his veins. Sarah's parents, Margaret and Robert Patterson, stood at the edge of their garden like avenging angels in expensive clothes. Margaret's face was set in lines of disapproval so deep they seemed carved in stone, while Robert's expression was thunderous with barely contained rage. They looked completely out of place in the natural beauty of the garden, their formal attire and hostile energy creating a dark cloud over what had been a perfect afternoon. "Graham Luckin." Margaret's voice cut across the space between them, sharp as broken glass. "We need to talk." Graham felt Wisdom tense beside him, her protective instincts immediately activated by the obvious hostility in the older woman's tone. He reached for her hand, finding strength in her touch as he rose, to face his late wife's parents. "Margaret, Robert," he said carefully, keeping his voice neutral despite the way his heart was hammering against his ribs. "This is unexpected. I wasn't aware you were planning to visit. We wouldn't have had to make an unannounced visit if you'd answered our calls," Robert snapped, his eyes scanning the garden with obvious distaste before landing on Wisdom with barely disguised contempt. "But it seems you've been too busy playing house to maintain contact with your daughter's grandparents." Wisdom stood slowly, her movements graceful despite the tension crackling in the air. She moved to check on Donna, positioning herself protectively near the baby while keeping her eyes on the hostile visitors. "Perhaps we should go inside to talk," Graham suggested, not wanting this confrontation to happen in the sacred space of their memory garden, especially not in front of Donna. "I think here is perfect," Margaret said coldly, her gaze finally landing on the memorial plantings around them. "In Sarah's garden, where she should be tending these flowers herself if you'd taken better care of her." The words hit Graham like a physical blow, and he felt Wisdom's sharp intake of breath beside him. The accusation was so cruel, so far from the truth of what had happened during Sarah's difficult labor, that for a moment he couldn't speak. "That's enough," Wisdom said quietly, her voice carrying the kind of steel that came from years of dealing with difficult people in high-stress medical situations. "Whatever issues you have, there's no call for attacking Graham over circumstances beyond anyone's control." Margaret's attention snapped to Wisdom like a predator spotting prey. "And you would know about taking care of my daughter, would you? You, who moved into her house and took over her family before her body was even cold in the ground?" "Mom, please." Graham started, but Margaret was just getting started. "Don't you, Mom, please me, Graham Luckin. Do you have any idea what people are saying about how quickly you replaced my daughter? About how you're dishonoring her memory by shacking up with some nurse who probably sees dollar signs when she looks at you?" Wisdom flinched as if she'd been slapped, but her voice remained steady. "I understand you're grieving, Mrs. Patterson, but I won't stand here and let you insult what Graham and I have built together. Your daughter's memory isn't dishonored by love. It's honored by the happiness and healing we've found." "Happiness?" Robert's voice was incredulous. "You call this travesty happiness? Our daughter died giving birth to that baby, and you've already moved another woman into her bed, into her life, like she never mattered at all." Graham felt something snap inside his chest. "Don't you dare," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare say Sarah didn't matter. Everything I do is because she mattered. This garden exists because she planned it. Donna is loved and cared for because Sarah would have wanted that. And yes, I love Wisdom because Sarah would have wanted me to be happy, to be whole, to give our daughter the best life possible. By replacing her mother with some stranger?" Margaret's voice rose to a near shriek. "By pretending this woman can ever be what Sarah was?" "I'm not trying to replace Sarah," Wisdom said firmly, moving closer to Graham in a show of united strength. "I'm trying to honor her by loving her family the way she would have wanted them to be loved." "You didn't even know her," Margaret spat. "You have no idea what Sarah would have wanted." "You're right," Wisdom acknowledged quietly. "I didn't know her personally, but I know that a woman who created a memory garden for her unborn daughter, who planned a space filled with beauty and growth and love, wouldn't want that daughter to grow up in a house haunted by grief. She'd want Donna surrounded by joy and laughter and people who choose to love her, people who choose to love her." Robert's face was turning purple with rage. "We're her grandparents, we're her blood family, not some opportunistic nurse who saw a vulnerable widower and moved in like a vulture." "That's enough," Graham roared, his patience finally shattered completely. "You will not speak about Wisdom that way in our home, in front of our daughter." "Our daughter?" Margaret's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Our daughter, Graham? That baby is Sarah's daughter, our granddaughter, and if you think we're going to stand by and watch you hand her over to some stranger to raise, you're even more deluded than we thought. The threat implicit in her words hung in the air like poison. Graham felt wisdom go very still beside him, and when he looked at her, he saw fear in her eyes for the first time since he'd known her. "What are you saying?" he asked quietly. "We're saying that if this is the environment you're providing for, Donna, maybe she'd be better off with people who actually loved her mother," Robert said coldly. "We've consulted with lawyers, Graham. A father who moves a strange woman into his house within months of his wife's death, who's so concerned with his own needs that he can't properly grieve. That doesn't look good in custody proceedings." The words hit the garden like a bomb, destroying the peace they'd built together with surgical precision. Graham felt the world tilt on its axis as the full implications of what Sarah's parents were threatening sank in. "You're threatening to take Donna away from me." His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more pain than any scream. "We're threatening to save her from a father who cares more about his girlfriend than his daughter's well-being," Margaret said with cruel satisfaction. "From a home where she's being raised by someone who has no legal relationship to her, no real commitment to her welfare." "I love her," Wisdom said desperately, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I love Donna like she's my own daughter." "But she's not, is she?" Margaret's smile was vicious. "You're not her mother. You're not even her stepmother. You're just some woman playing house with a man too weak to raise his child alone." Graham watched in horror as Wisdom seemed to crumble under the weight of the words. All the confidence and strength she'd shown over the past months drained from her face, replaced by the devastating realization that legally she had no rights to the child she'd been raising as her own. "Wisdom," he started, reaching for her, but she stepped back. "They're right," she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't have any legal claim to her. If something happened to you, if they fought for custody, nothing is going to happen to me," Graham said fiercely, but even as he said it, he could see the doubt creeping into Wisdom's eyes. "This is what we're talking about," Robert said with satisfaction. "She's already thinking about protecting herself instead of what's best for Donna. A real mother wouldn't abandon a child because of legal threats." "That's not what I'm doing," Wisdom protested, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "Isn't it?" Margaret pressed. "You're already backing away, already thinking about how to save yourself instead of fighting for her. Sarah would have fought to the death for her daughter." Graham watched in agony as the poison of their words found its mark. Wisdom was looking at Donna with an expression of such heartbreak it made his chest ache, as if she was already saying goodbye. "Maybe," Wisdom's voice was barely audible, "maybe they're right. Maybe Donna deserves better than the uncertainty I bring to her life." "Don't you dare," Graham said desperately. "Don't you dare let them convince you that our love is somehow wrong or harmful. Look around you, Graham." Margaret gestured broadly at the garden they'd created together. "Look at how you've let her change everything. Sarah's garden, Sarah's house, Sarah's life. All transformed to suit some stranger's vision. Is this what Sarah would have wanted? Her memory erased so you could play house with the first woman who showed you attention?" The words were designed to wound, and they found their target. Graham looked around at the garden he'd thought was honoring Sarah's memory, and for the first time since Wisdom had entered his life, he felt doubt creep in. Had he moved too fast? Had he been so desperate for healing that he'd forgotten to properly grieve? "We're leaving," Wisdom said suddenly, her voice flat and dead. "I'm leaving. Tonight." "Wisdom." "No," Graham pleaded, but she was already moving toward the house, toward Donna. "They're right about one thing," she said without turning. "Around. Donna deserves stability, deserves a family that can't be threatened or torn apart by legal challenges. She deserves better than what I can give her. You are what she deserves, Graham called after her, but wisdom didn't stop. Margaret and Robert watched with obvious satisfaction as their poison did its work, destroying the beautiful life Graham and wisdom had built together with the precision of experts in emotional warfare. This is for the best, Margaret said with false sympathy. Once you've had time to properly grieve Sarah, once you understand what you've lost, you'll thank us for saving you from making a terrible mistake. But Graham wasn't listening to them anymore. He was watching wisdom disappear into their house, watching the woman he loved prepare to walk out of his life because she believed it was best for the child they both adored. The memory garden they'd planted together suddenly felt like a graveyard, the roses and sunflowers seeming to mock him with their beauty. The storm that was Sarah's parents had arrived and destroyed everything precious in a matter of minutes, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. From inside the house came the sound of Donna beginning to cry, as if she too understood that something essential was being torn away from their family. The sound pierced Graham's heart like a blade, a baby's wail that spoke of loss and confusion and the terrible fragility of the love they'd thought was unbreakable. As dark clouds began to gather overhead, mirroring the storm that had just devastated their perfect afternoon, Graham realized that sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes the ghosts of the past and the cruelty of those who claimed to care could destroy even the most beautiful new beginning. The rainbow they'd thought they were building toward suddenly seemed impossibly far away, hidden behind storm clouds that threatened to wash away everything they'd planted together in the garden of their love. Chapter 8. Sacred Revelations. The house felt heavy with tension as wisdom moved through it, mechanically packing her belongings while tears streamed down her face. Donna's cries echoed from the nursery, where Graham was desperately trying to comfort her, the baby's distress mirroring the heartbreak tearing their family apart. Margaret and Robert Patterson sat in the living room like vultures waiting to pick clean the bones of the love that had flourished here, their satisfied expressions making it clear they considered their mission accomplished. They had successfully poisoned the well of happiness that Graham and wisdom had drawn from for months, and now they waited to see the complete destruction of what they viewed as an abomination against their daughter's memory. Wisdom paused in her packing as she came across the engagement ring Graham had given her just weeks ago, the diamond catching the afternoon light that streamed through their bedroom window. She'd been so certain then, so sure that love could conquer anything, that their bond was strong enough to weather any storm. Now the ring felt like a symbol of naive hope, of dreams too beautiful to survive in the harsh light of reality. "I have to protect her," she whispered to herself, clutching the ring against her chest. "I have to protect both of them." But even as she said the words, her heart was screaming in protest. Every fiber of her being rebelled against the idea of leaving Donna, of abandoning the child who had become as precious to her as if she'd given birth to her herself. The thought of never again seeing those bright green eyes light up with recognition, never again feeling those tiny hands grasp her finger, was almost more than she could bear. From downstairs came the sound of raised voices, Graham arguing with his in-laws, his desperation and fury clear even through the closed bedroom door. Wisdom could hear fragments of the conversation, words like custody and unfit father and proper environment that made her stomach churn with dread. She had to leave. For Donna's sake, for Graham's sake, she had to remove herself from the equation before these toxic people could use her presence to justify tearing this family apart. It was the most loving thing she could do, even though it felt like ripping her own heart from her chest. A soft knock on the bedroom door made her freeze, thinking Graham had come to try to convince her to stay. But when the door opened, It wasn't Graham who entered. It was Margaret Patterson, her face wearing an expression of false sympathy that was somehow more insulting than her earlier cruelty. "I'm glad to see you're being sensible about this," Margaret said, her voice dripping with condescension as she surveyed the half-packed suitcase on the bed. "I know this must be difficult, but it really is for the best." Wisdom didn't trust herself to speak, afraid that if she opened her mouth, all the grief and rage building inside her would pour out in a way that would only prove Margaret's point about her being unsuitable. "You seem like a nice enough girl," Margaret continued, moving closer with the confidence of someone who believed she'd already won. "I'm sure you'll find someone more appropriate, someone who doesn't come with all this baggage. Graham needs to focus on properly grieving his wife and learning to be a real father to Donna without distractions." The dismissive way she said distractions, as if the love Wisdom felt for Graham and Donna was nothing more than a passing fancy, finally broke through the numbness that had been protecting her. Distractions. Wisdom's voice was quiet, but deadly. "Is that what you think I am?" Margaret's smile faltered slightly at the steel in Wisdom's tone. "Well, what I mean is that Graham is obviously confused right now, seeking comfort in inappropriate places. Once he's had time to process his loss properly." "His loss?" Wisdom turned fully to face Sarah's mother, and something in her expression made Margaret take an involuntary step backward. "What exactly do you know about Graham's loss, Mrs. Patterson? What do you know about what he went through that night?" "I know my daughter died because the medical team failed her," Margaret snapped, her veneer of false sympathy cracking. "I know that better care could have saved her life." "Do you?" Wisdom's voice was eerily calm now, the calm that comes before a storm breaks with devastating force. "Do you know exactly what happened in that delivery room?" Margaret blinked, clearly, taken aback by the question. "The doctors gave us a report, of course. Complications during delivery, excessive bleeding, cardiac arrest. Medical negligence is what it was." Wisdom felt something inside her chest crack wide open, not with pain, but with the terrible pressure of truth that had been building for months. The secret she'd carried, the knowledge that had made her approach to Graham's grief so careful, so reverent, was suddenly demanding to be released. 18 hours, Wisdom said softly, her eyes fixed on Margaret's face. "I was there for 18 hours, fighting to save both of them." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, and Margaret's face went completely white. "What did you say?" "I said I was there," Wisdom repeated, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I was Sarah's labor and delivery nurse. I was the one holding her hand through every contraction, monitoring every heartbeat, fighting for every breath." Margaret stumbled backward, as if she'd been physically struck, her hand flying to her throat. That's impossible. You said you were a pediatric nurse. You said you met Graham at the cemetery." "I am a pediatric nurse now," Wisdom said, her voice steady despite the tears flowing again. "I transferred from labor and delivery after Sarah died, after I couldn't save her." The bedroom door flew open, and Graham appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of raised voices. His face was haggard with exhaustion and grief, but when he saw Wisdom and his mother-in-law facing each other like combatants, his expression shifted to confusion. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between them. Wisdom turned to him, her heart breaking all over again at the pain in his eyes. "I have to tell you something, Graham. Something I should have told you months ago." She saw the exact moment understanding began to dawn in his expression, saw his face transform as the pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving suddenly clicked into place. "The night Donna was born," Wisdom continued, her voice cracking with emotion, "I was your nurse, I was Sarah's nurse, I was there for all of it." Graham's knees seemed to give out, and he sank into the chair by the window, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been relief. "You were... But how? Why didn't you?" "Because I failed her." Wisdom whispered, the words scraping raw against her throat. Because I was supposed to save her, and I couldn't, and I've been carrying that guilt ever since. Margaret made a choking sound, her face now grey with shock. You were there, you were responsible for— I was responsible for fighting for her. Life every second of 18 hours, Wisdom said fiercely, turning back to Margaret with eyes blazing. I was responsible for monitoring her vitals, for recognizing when complications developed, for calling in specialists, for performing CPR when her heart stopped. I was responsible for making sure your granddaughter survived even when it became clear that her mother might not. The words poured out of her now, months of suppressed grief and guilt and love tumbling over each other in a torrent of truth that had been too long contained. Your daughter was the strongest woman I've ever known, Wisdom continued, her voice breaking. She fought so hard to bring Donna into this world, even when her body was failing, even when we knew she was in danger. She never gave up, never stopped fighting for her baby. Graham was staring at her with an expression of such overwhelming emotion that it was impossible to read. Wisdom, he breathed. All this time, I've been honoring her last request, Wisdom said, turning back to him with tears streaming down her face. Because in those final moments, when she knew she might not make it, she gripped my hand with the last of her strength and made me promise something. The room was so quiet now that the only sound was Donna's soft breathing. Through the baby monitor, a peaceful counterpoint to the devastating revelation unfolding in the bedroom. What? Graham whispered. What did she ask you to promise? Wisdom closed her eyes, remembering that moment with crystal clarity. Sarah's face pale but determined, her hand surprisingly strong despite everything she'd been through. Her eyes burning with maternal love and desperate hope, she said, "Promise me, if something happens to me, find my Graham, find my baby, help him with her. She'll need a mother's love, and he'll need someone to remind him that it's okay to be happy again." Wisdom opened her eyes, looking directly at Graham. She made me promise to take care of both of you if she couldn't. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret had gone completely white, her hand pressed to her mouth as if to hold back words or sickness. Graham sat frozen in his chair, staring at Wisdom with an expression of such profound shock and understanding that it seemed to change the very air in the room. "That's why you came to the cemetery," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "That's why you offered to— That's why I recognized your name in the obituary," Wisdom confirmed. "That's why, when I saw you there in the rain with Donna, I knew it was meant to be. I wasn't a stranger taking advantage of a vulnerable man. I was a woman keeping a sacred promise to a dying mother." Margaret made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Sarah asked you to— Sarah asked me to love them if she couldn't," Wisdom said simply. "And I have. I've loved them the way she would have wanted them to be loved, the way she would have loved them herself if she'd been given the chance." Graham rose from his chair slowly, moving toward Wisdom like a man in a dream. "You've been carrying this all along, this guilt, this responsibility?" "I've been carrying her love," Wisdom corrected. "The love she had for you and Donna passed to me like a sacred trust. Every time I've cared for Donna, every time I've comforted you, every time I've felt my heart break with love for both of you, it's been Sarah's love working through me." "My God," Graham breathed, reaching out to touch her face. "Wisdom, my love, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid you'd think I was only there out of guilt or obligation," Wisdom admitted. "I was afraid you wouldn't believe that what I feel for you both is real and separate from the promise I made." "But it is real," Graham said fiercely. "What we have, what we've built together, that's not obligation. That's love." From the doorway came the sound of sobbing, and they turned to see Robert Patterson supporting his wife as she wept with the kind of grief that comes from understanding you've made a terrible mistake. "Sarah chose her," Margaret whispered through her tears. "Our daughter chose her to love you both, and we tried to—" She couldn't finish the sentence, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she'd almost destroyed. "You tried to honor Sarah's memory the way you understood it," Wisdom said gently, her heart already forgiving even as it continued to break. "But Sarah's real wish wasn't for Graham to grieve forever. It was for him and Donna to be loved, to be happy, to have the kind of family she dreamed of giving them." Margaret looked up at Wisdom with eyes red from crying, and for the first time since they'd met, there was no hostility in her expression, only remorse and dawning understanding. "Can you ever forgive us?" she whispered. "Can you forgive two bitter old people who almost destroyed the very thing our daughter wanted most?" Wisdom moved toward her, this woman who had been so cruel just hours before, and gently took her hands. "There's nothing to forgive," she said softly. "You were protecting Sarah's memory the only way you knew how. Now we can protect it together by loving the family she left behind." As the afternoon light continued to stream through their bedroom window, the four adults stood together in the space where so much love had grown, united finally by the truth that had been waiting all along to heal them. Sarah's last wish hadn't been for eternal mourning or preserved grief. It had been for continued love, for new beginnings, for the understanding that the deepest honor we can pay to those we've lost is to live fully, love completely, and create the kind of beauty they would have wanted to see in the world. The storm had broken. The terrible misunderstanding had been cleared away, and through the windows of their home, the first rays of the rainbow they'd been building toward were finally beginning to shine. Chapter 9. Healing the Circle. The afternoon sun was beginning to set as four adults and one baby made their way through Willowbrook Cemetery, their footsteps soft on the path leading to Sarah's grave. Margaret Patterson walked beside Wisdom, clutching white roses with trembling hands, while Robert carried sunflowers. The transformation in Sarah's parents over the past hours had been remarkable, understanding and acceptance replacing the bitter anger that had nearly destroyed everything. Graham carried Donna, who was wide awake and curious about this new adventure, her bright green eyes taking in the world around her with innocent wonder. The late afternoon light caught in her fine hair, making it shine like spun gold. "I can't believe I never asked," Margaret said quietly as they walked, her voice thick with remorse. "All these months of anger and blame, and I never once asked for the details of what happened that night. I was so consumed with finding someone to blame that I never thought to be grateful to the person who tried so hard to save her." Wisdom reached out and squeezed the older woman's hand gently. "Grief makes us do things we never thought we were capable of. What matters is that we're here now, together, ready to honor Sarah the way she would have wanted." As they approached the grave, Wisdom felt her heart clench with the familiar mixture of love and loss. The headstone was exactly as she remembered from that rainy day when she'd first encountered Graham and Donna, but now the space around it had been transformed. The memory garden they'd planned had extended to Sarah's resting place, with roses and sunflowers creating a natural border of beauty. "You've made it so beautiful," Robert said softly, taking in the careful landscaping. "She would have loved this." "It was her design," Graham said quietly, settling onto the grass beside the headstone with Donna in his arms. "Wisdom helped me bring her vision to life, but every flower came from Sarah's sketches." Margaret knelt beside the grave, her fingers tracing the engraved words. "Sarah Elizabeth Luckin, beloved wife and mother. Her love lives on in those she left behind." She looked up at Wisdom with new understanding. It does, doesn't it? Her love really does live on. Wisdom knelt beside her, placing her bouquet of white roses and sunflowers at the base of the headstone. Every day, every time I hold Donna, every time I see Graham smile, every time we work in the garden she planned, her love is there, guiding us. Tell us about that night, Margaret said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, I need to know what my daughter's final hours were like. Wisdom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the story she'd carried alone for so long. She was the strongest woman I've ever known, Wisdom began. From the moment I met her in triage, she was more concerned about everyone else than herself. She kept apologizing to me for being in labor during my night shift. Margaret laughed through her tears, recognizing her daughter. That sounds like Sarah. She talked about you constantly during those early hours, Wisdom continued, about how excited you were to become grandparents, about the baby blanket you'd knitted, Margaret, and the cradle you'd built, Robert. She was so proud to be your daughter. She talked about Graham even more, Wisdom said, turning to look at him. She was so excited for him to become a father. She kept saying, "My Graham has such a big heart. He's going to love this baby so much it might break him in the best possible way." Graham's breath hitched as he recognized words that sounded exactly like Sarah. She really said that? Word for word. And she was right, wasn't she? The sun continued its descent, painting the cemetery in shades of gold and rose, and Wisdom found herself settling into the rhythm of storytelling, sharing memories that had been locked away too long. When the complications started, she never panicked, Wisdom said. Even when we had to bring in specialists, she stayed focused on one thing, making sure her baby would be okay. Was she in pain? Margaret asked, her mother's heart breaking. She was incredibly strong, Wisdom said. Yes, she was in pain, but she never complained. She just kept asking if the baby was okay, if we could hear a strong heartbeat. Donna made a soft cooing sound, and everyone turned to look at her with expressions of wonder and love. "When did we lose her?" Robert asked, his voice breaking. "It was very sudden," Wisdom said gently. "The hemorrhaging started right after Donna was born. Sarah got to hold her for about 30 seconds, 30 beautiful seconds, where she looked into her daughter's eyes and fell completely in love. She said, 'Hello, my beautiful girl. Mama loves you so much.'" Graham was openly sobbing now, clutching Donna against his chest. "I never knew she got to hold her. I made sure those 30 seconds happened," Wisdom explained. "When the bleeding got worse and we realized we might lose her, she made me promise. She made me promise to find you, Graham, to help you with Donna. She said, 'That man has so much love in his heart, but he's going to be scared. Promise me you'll help him see that love is enough.'" "She knew," Graham said in amazement. "She knew exactly what I would need to hear. Sarah's last words were about love," Wisdom said, her voice soft with reverence. She said, "Tell them both that love doesn't end. Tell them it just finds new ways to grow." And then she smiled and said, "Promise me you'll show them that love multiplies." The words settled over the group like a blessing, and for the first time since that terrible day, Graham felt like he understood what had really happened, not just the medical facts, but the spiritual truth of Sarah's passing. "Love multiplies," Robert repeated softly. "That's what you've been doing, isn't it?" "That's what we've all been doing," Wisdom corrected gently. "Graham by being an amazing father, you and Margaret by loving Donna from the moment she was born, and me by keeping the promise I made to a dying mother." Wisdom pulled something from her purse, a small photo album she'd brought specifically for this moment. "I have something for you," she said, handing it to Margaret. "Pictures from that night. The hospital photographer took them during those 30 seconds when Sarah held Donna." Margaret opened the album with trembling hands and immediately broke down at the first image. Sarah, exhausted but radiant, looking down at her newborn daughter with pure love. "She's so Beautiful, Margaret sobbed. Look how happy she is. They passed the album around, each person absorbing these precious final images of Sarah as a mother. In every photo, despite her exhaustion, Sarah glowed with maternal love and fierce pride. I want to say something to her, Margaret announced, moving closer to the headstone. She knelt in the soft earth, placing her hands against the carved stone. Sarah, my darling girl, she began, her voice strong despite her tears. I'm so sorry I didn't understand before. Wisdom is incredible, sweetheart. She's loved your family exactly the way you would have wanted. And Donna is so perfect, so happy, so surrounded by love. Robert joined his wife beside the grave. We were wrong, Princess. We understand now. We'll support them, we'll love them, we'll be the grandparents you would have wanted us to be. Graham and Wisdom approached the headstone together, with Donna babbling happily in her father's arms. Graham knelt beside his in-laws, his free hand joining theirs on the stone. "Thank you, my love," he whispered. "Thank you for knowing exactly what we would need. Thank you for sending us wisdom." Wisdom was the last to speak, her hand resting gently on the stone. "I kept my promise, Sarah," she said softly. "I found them. I loved them. I showed them that love multiplies. And now I understand that you didn't just give me a responsibility that night. You gave me a gift. You gave me the family I didn't know I was looking for." As if summoned by her words, a gentle breeze stirred the flowers around Sarah's grave, carrying with it the scent of roses and sunflowers. Donna laughed suddenly, a bright sound that seemed to bless their gathering. "The circle is complete," Wisdom said, looking around at the people gathered in the fading light. "Sarah's love has brought us all together, exactly as she intended." Margaret stood slowly, her face transformed by peace. "You're getting married next month, and we're going to be there." "We wouldn't miss it," Robert confirmed. "If you can forgive two foolish old people who almost destroyed something beautiful." "Your family," Graham said simply. "Sarah would have wanted you there, and so do we." As they prepared to leave the cemetery, Margaret had one final request. "May I hold her, my granddaughter?" Graham carefully transferred Donna to her grandmother's arms, and the moment Margaret held the baby, something shifted in her face, the bitter grief finally beginning to transform into something softer. "Hello, my beautiful granddaughter," Margaret whispered. "I'm sorry it took me so long to really see you, but I see it now and I love it, and I love you so very much." Donna reached up with one tiny hand and touched Margaret's cheek, offering comfort in the way that only babies can. It was a moment of such perfect healing that everyone watching felt their hearts crack open with grateful love. As they walked back through the cemetery together, the setting sun painted everything in gold and rose. Behind them, Sarah's grave was surrounded by the flowers she'd chosen, watched over by the love she'd set in motion. The circle had been healed, the family made whole, and tomorrow would bring a wedding that honored the past while celebrating the infinite possibilities of love that truly multiplies when shared with open hearts. Chapter 10. Perfect Love. Perfected. 8 months after that first meeting in the cemetery, the garden behind Graham and Wisdom's home had transformed into something magical. The late spring morning was perfect. Warm sunshine filtered through flowering trees, gentle breeze carried the scent of roses and jasmine, and every bloom seemed to have opened for this day. White chairs arranged in semicircles faced an altar of flowering vines and Sarah's beloved roses, while sunflowers created golden borders that glowed in the morning light. The garden cathedral spoke of love, transcending life and death, of new beginnings growing from the soil of loss. Graham stood before the mirror, adjusting his charcoal grey suit, a white rose boutonniere pinned to his lapel. Margaret's tribute to Sarah's presence. In his breast pocket, He carried a small photo of Sarah holding newborn Donna. Through the window, he watched guests arriving and saw the most precious sight. Donna, now 10 months old, toddling unsteadily across the grass. In a tiny white dress, the baby wore a miniature wedding gown with photos of Sarah and River sewn invisibly into the hem, ensuring their memory would be part of every step she took. "She's gotten so big," Robert Patterson said, joining Graham at the window. The transformation in Sarah's father had been remarkable. The bitter man who nearly destroyed their happiness, replaced by someone who embraced his role as grandfather. "Sarah would have loved seeing this," Graham said softly. "She is seeing it," Robert replied with conviction. "I feel her here, blessing this day." Downstairs, gentle jazz music began flowing through the house as the string quartet started playing. River's compositions. Graham's heart raced as he realized the moment had arrived. In the guest bedroom, Wisdom stood before her mirror in an ivory silk dress with delicate lace details, perfect for their garden wedding. Her hair was styled in loose curls, with white flowers woven throughout, and she wore River's mother's pearl earrings. Margaret appeared behind her, glowing with maternal love. "You're absolutely radiant, dear one. I can't believe this is really happening," Wisdom whispered. Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a velvet box, something that belonged to Sarah. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet engraved with "Love Multiplies, SEL." "She had this made when she found out she was pregnant," Margaret explained, fastening it around Wisdom's wrist. "She said, becoming. A mother meant multiplying love, not dividing it." Wisdom's eyes filled with tears. She really understood, didn't she? "And now, you're living proof of her wisdom." The garden filled with warmth as the ceremony began. Pastor Williams, who had officiated both Sarah's and River's funerals, stood beneath the flowering arch with joy radiating from his face, witnessing love rising from loss, beauty blooming from grief. Margaret walked slowly down the aisle, preparing to give away the daughter of her heart. Behind her came Wisdom, luminous in the morning light, more beautiful than anything Graham had ever created. But it was the love radiating from her face, the certainty in her eyes that made his heart soar. As Wisdom reached the altar, Margaret placed her hand in Graham's. "Love her well, as Sarah would have wanted." "I will," Graham promised. Pastor Williams began. "We gather to witness the union of two souls who found each other in darkness and created light together. Graham and Wisdom's love testifies to the power of healing and the truth that love never dies. It transforms and multiplies." Graham spoke his vows first. "Wisdom Moon, 8 months ago you appeared like an answer to a prayer I didn't know I was praying. You taught me that love doesn't diminish when someone dies. It expands, seeking new hearts to fill. You've loved Donna as your own daughter, honored Sarah's memory while creating new traditions, and shown me that happiness and grief can coexist in a heart that's learned to multiply love." He looked at Donna, babbling happily in Robert's arms, then back at Wisdom. "I promise to love you with the devotion Sarah taught me, to support your dreams as you've supported mine, to build a family that honors the past while embracing the future." Wisdom's vows were poetry. "Graham Luckin, you've taught me that broken hearts can love again, that families can be created in unexpected ways, and that honoring the dead doesn't mean forgetting how to live. You've given me the greatest gift, the chance to be Donna's chosen mother, to fulfill a sacred promise." She looked around the garden at their perfect wedding party, the flowers blooming in testimony to love's power. "I promise to be the mother Sarah asked me to be for Donna, to love you both with fierce protectiveness and gentle tenderness. I promise to build our clinic together, creating healing that honors our calling, and to love you the way River taught me, like music that makes the world more beautiful." As Graham slipped the wedding band onto Wisdom's finger, something magical happened. Donna suddenly clapped her tiny hands and said her first word, clear as a bell. "Mama!" The word was directed unmistakably at Wisdom, and the entire assembly erupted in joyful tears and laughter. Pastor Williams wiped his eyes before continuing. "It seems we have approval from a very important family member. By the power vested in me and by the love that binds you together, I pronounce you husband and wife. Graham, you may kiss your bride." Their first kiss as husband and wife was soft and deep, witnessed by loved ones and blessed by memory. When they broke apart, white doves, Margaret's surprise, circled overhead in perfect spirals, their wings catching sunlight like living prayers. As guests celebrated, the new family found a quiet moment near Sarah's memorial roses. Graham held Donna, who kept reaching toward Wisdom and babbling "Mama" with delight, while Wisdom stood close enough that they formed a perfect circle of love. She chose the perfect moment for her first word, Graham marveled. Sarah's timing. Wisdom laughed through tears. Even from heaven, she knows when to make the biggest impact. Margaret and Robert approached with champagne and complete happiness. "To Sarah," Margaret said, raising her glass toward the memorial roses, "for bringing us all together." "To River," Robert added, looking toward the sunflowers, "for teaching us that love is music, and music never ends." "To love that multiplies," Graham said, pulling Wisdom close while Donna babbled contentedly. "To perfect love perfected," Wisdom added. When the last guest departed and the garden was quiet except for evening breeze through flowering trees, Graham and Wisdom stood together in their memory garden, still in wedding clothes, holding their sleeping daughter, Mrs. Luckin. Graham said softly, "Dr. Wisdom Moon Luckin," she corrected with a smile. "Don't forget the clinic opens in 2 months. How could I forget? We're going to change the world, one family at a time." Above them, stars began appearing, and night-blooming jasmine filled the air with sweet promise. Donna stirred in her sleep, making soft sounds that had become the soundtrack of their happiness. "Do you feel them?" Wisdom asked quietly. "Sarah and River." Graham looked around their perfect garden, at the roses and sunflowers blooming together, at the baby who had brought them together, at the woman who had kept a sacred promise and found her own salvation. "I feel them," he said with certainty. "Their love surrounds us, protects us, celebrates with us. They're not gone. They're part of everything beautiful we create together." As they walked toward the house where they would begin their first night as a married family, Wisdom paused to look back at the garden. In the twilight, she could swear she saw 2 figures among the flowers, a woman with Sarah's gentle smile and a man with a guitar, both glowing with approval. "Thank you," she whispered to the garden, "to the memory that had made this possible, for trusting me with your greatest treasures." The wind stirred the roses in response, carrying their scent through the night like a blessing, like a promise. That love, real love, never ends. It just finds new ways to grow, new hearts to fill, new families to create from the beautiful intersection of loss and hope. In their house surrounded by the memory garden, 3 hearts beat as one, proving that true love doesn't die. It multiplies, creating infinite circles of blessing that heal the world one perfect love story at a time.